You'll have to forgive me if I seem a bit on edge these days. Living through the events of the last few months has left me pretty shaken up, to say the least. I'm not sure I'll ever feel truly safe again. It all started a few months ago when my wife Sarah and I moved into our new house in the suburbs. It was a nice little two-story place in a pleasant neighborhood. Exactly what we had been looking for to start a family. Little did we know the nightmares that were in store for us. At first, everything seemed totally normal. We spent those first few weeks unpacking, getting settled in, meeting some of the neighbors. They all seemed friendly enough. All except one, that is. Looking back, I realized there were little things about our next-door neighbor that should have tipped me off from the beginning that something wasn't quite right with him. His name was Jerry, and he was a man probably in his late 50s who lived alone. Whenever we saw him outside doing yard work or getting his mail, he always kept to himself, never waving or saying hello like the other neighbors. He just had this strange, unsettling vibe about him, but I tried not to read too much into it at first. He's probably just an introvert who likes to keep to himself, I reasoned at the time. How wrong I was. The first really bizarre incident happened maybe a week after we moved in. I was out front one Saturday morning washing my car, music playing through my headphones as I worked. At one point, I happened to glance over toward Jerry's house and noticed his curtains moving ever so slightly. I thought maybe he was just looking out the window. But then it happened again a few minutes later. And again. It was like he was peeking out discreetly but didn't want to be seen. An unsettling feeling started creeping over me, but I tried to shake it off, convincing myself I was probably just being paranoid. Over the following weeks, however, the incidents only grew more frequent and more disturbing. There were days when it seemed like every time I went outside, I could almost sense Jerry's eyes following me from behind those curtains. He was always watching, like some kind of deranged sentinel. Sometimes I'd catch him standing perfectly still in the shadows of his backyard, shrouded in darkness as he peered through the bushes separating our properties. I'd be doing something as innocuous as grilling on the patio, and I'd look over to see his hollow eyes fixated on me. Anytime I tried to make eye contact or wave, he'd immediately retreat back inside like a frightened animal. One day, Sarah and I were lounging by the pool in our backyard when all of a sudden this strange crunching sound started coming from the bushes. We both froze, wondering if maybe it was a rabid raccoon or something. But then I realized with the chill that the sound seemed to be moving, slowly making its way along the length of the bushes, like someone was creeping behind them, peering through at us. Sarah must have sensed it too, because she grabbed my arm and we both fled inside, locking all the doors and windows. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but we ended up having to sleep in the guest bedroom toward the front of the house that night because we were too freaked out by the idea of Jerry being able to look in from the bushes behind our bedroom. From there, the situation only grew more twisted and unnerving. There were the times Sarah thought she heard faint footsteps outside our bedroom window in the dead of night, or felt like she was being watched while folding laundry in the backyard. One evening, I was upstairs fixing the cable box when an odd smell hit my nostrils, like rotting animal carcass. I followed the scent until it led me to our bedroom window. And there on the sill were what looked like fecal streaks, almost like a dog had marked its territory. That was the night we first considered installing a security system and cameras. But even that didn't do much to quell our growing fears. A few weeks after the fecal incident, we were reviewing the security footage when we noticed something on the tape that made our blood run cold. At around 3 a.m., the camera clearly caught a figure lurking in the shadows of our backyard, concealed behind the bushes, and watching our bedroom window for several minutes before disappearing again. The angle didn't allow us to see who it was, but we were both haunted by that unmistakable sensation of being studied, hunted. From there, it was just a living nightmare. The noises in the night grew more frequent. Scurrying footsteps outside our bedroom, faint scratching sounds on the walls or windows like fingernails, things being moved around in the backyard. We lived in a perpetual state of hypervigilance, jumping at every creak and thump. The strain was starting to really take its toll, both emotionally and physically. Sarah could hardly sleep through the night anymore without waking up in a cold sweat, swearing she could feel someone's eyes on her. I began suspecting Jerry more and more, despite having no concrete proof he was behind it all. I tried peering over at his house to see if I could spot any movement from his windows, but his curtains always remained drawn. It was like he was taunting us, knowing we were powerless to catch him in the act. One night, I finally mustered up the courage to call the police. An officer came over and checked the premises, but unsurprisingly found no signs of a break-in or anything conspicuous around the property. He did agree to swing by Jerry's house to have a friendly word with him, just to be on the safe side. The next day, the officer knocked on our door again, with a grave look on his face. According to the officer, there had been no one living next door during this time. Jerry, who was supposed to be the occupant of that house, had been confined to a nursing home for the last 3 months, recovering from a stroke. His house had been vacant the entire time, ever since his son moved him out to get medical care. The police had verified his story, eliminating him as a suspect. But that revelation only made the lingering presence feel exponentially more menacing. If it wasn't the neighbor we assumed was behind it all, then who or what had been tormenting us? Sarah and I recoiled in sheer terror. All those days of being watched, all those bone-chilling encounters in our own backyard. It wasn't the creepy neighbor at all. It was something else. Something that had been studying us, observing our routines, dwelling in the darkness without ever being seen. An unseeable force had violated the sanctity of our home, our safe space, and made us feel like prisoners in our own house. How had it slipped past our security? How had it moved so stealthily about the property without being picked up on camera? The questions overwhelmed us, our minds spinning at the implications. We had prepared ourselves for a creepy neighbor, but this was something more insidious. A question suddenly popped into my head. Was it even human? Or was it an ethereal tormentor without a corporeal form, capable of going unseen while it slowly unmade our reality? Paranoia gripped me like I've never known. Every flicker of movement in my peripheral vision made me start, wondering if I'd finally catch a glimpse of our twisted stalker. At night, the sounds of the house, settling and creaking, took on sinister new dimensions. As my imagination ran wild trying to decode each groan and thump. Was something in the vents? In the walls? In the room with us? The psychological terror was relentless, not knowing what kind of force we were dealing with, or how to defend ourselves against such a malignant, unseen presence. We couldn't flee. We couldn't hide. Wherever we went, it would simply follow and resume its torment. So we tried taking every possible precaution to fortify our home, almost like building an actual panic room. Stronger locks, new security cameras, lights left on at all hours. Maybe if we couldn't see it, at least we could try to make it more difficult for it to see us. But no matter what measures we took, the ominous phenomena persisted. Terrifying audio cues in the dead of night, the inescapable sense of being studied, of having our most intimate moments spied upon, the gnawing dread that this malevolent specter could strike at any time, with no way to counter its advances. Until one day, it just suddenly stopped. No strange noises. The maddening feeling of being watched washed away, like it was never there. It was silent. Looking back now, part of me wonders if we somehow opened a door to the supernatural that should have remained sealed. Maybe in that house, some disturbing events occurred in the past that left a harmful psychic imprint, one that attached itself to us simply by being the new inhabitants. Maybe it lost interest in us and left to find another, a more interesting prey. All I know is we never did find any rational explanation for those dark months of torment and psychological torture. The whispering settled, the strange noises faded, but the underlying feeling of dread never left us, like a scar that would never fully heal. So you can forgive my skittishness, can't you? That bone-deep unease that comes from knowing there are darker forces in this world than we can comprehend. Knowing that even in your own home, you may not truly be alone or safe. So tread carefully, dear listener. I pray that the sinister presence never finds you like it found us.